Hi everybody. This video is going to be something a little bit different. It's a concept that I've really tried to embellish into my own play. This is something that I think a lot of people are kind of aware of, but it wasn't actually until very, very recently that I really started to try hammering these weak capped ranges. I just don't think I was doing it enough. And when I look back at some of my play, I think there were plenty of spots where I missed this opportunity, where I missed the opportunity to attack weak capped ranges. So, by going over this, I'll be informing myself and informing others about the kind of spots you can face and how to proceed. Okay, so when I was playing for the online poker diary at 2NL and at 5NL, I noticed something. There were certain spots where players tend to cap their range. In other words, they're not balanced. This is also something that's kind of obvious, that a lot of people kind of know about. People aren't really balanced at microstakes. In this video, I'll be talking about a specific type of imbalance. They cap their range in certain spots. This can be taken advantage of. There's a kind of saying that goes around, don't bluff people at microstakes. I don't think that's true. There are certainly spots where you can bluff, you just need to pick the right size. People who say that you should never bluff at microstakes probably bet too small. And I'm going to show you some examples of where we run into these kinds of spots, and we should be betting quite large, as you'll see. So, let's go over an example. Villain from under the gun opens. Hero 3-bets 7-6 suited from the hijack, and villain calls. The flop comes Queen 9 deuce with a flush draw. He checks to us. We bet 1/3 pot with our entire range, and villain calls. The turn will go check check, and on the river, villain checks to us. What should we do? I'll give you guys a few seconds to pause the video to try and think of an answer for yourself before I say what I did and why I think it's the best. Okay, so in this action, because villain did not bet the river, he has massively capped his range. The vast majority of players will have capped their range to top pair at best. Okay, I say at best because there's a lot of other hands that could be here, like Ace King could be here, Ace Jack could be here with a heart maybe. Like middle pair can be there, like 10-9 suited, Jack 9 suited. Under pairs like 7s, 6s, 5s, 4s can also be there. And then top pair like Ace Queen, King Queen, Queen Jack, Queen 10, those kinds of hands. A lot of people are not going to check a flush or a straight on the river, or a set. So, most people just have top pair at best, and when they don't have top pair, they have something worse. How can we take advantage of this if we know that villain has top pair at best? We should overbet. We should bet a size that makes top pair fold. Okay, if you've got the note that the guys are calling station, don't try this, obviously, but there's a lot of people who will just fold like Queen Jack, King Queen, maybe Ace Queen, to an overbet on the river. I'm very aware that we're taking a very exploitative line, like this is very imbalanced. And if you're against good opponents who's aware that you might be trying to take advantage of them, then you have to play more of a balanced approach and try and pick appropriate bluffs here. But here, it's not so clear. In reality, when I played this hand live, the villain tanked his entire time bank and then folded, which kind of suggests that he had top pair. Maybe he had second pair and was trying to hero, but you know, if he has top pair at best, this kind of overbet will work very often. How often do you say? Let's go through it. We're betting 260 to win 181. It must work at least our bet divided by the size of the pot plus our bet. So 260 over 181 plus 260 must work at least 59% of the time. Does villain fold more than 59% of the time? Well, you don't really have to combo count here. If his range is capped at top pair, and he folds top pair, villain will fold 100% of the time. In the actual text, I said folding close to 100% because you can never really be sure, right? He might call ace-queen, he might be trapping with a set, he might be trapping with a flush or a straight. Those possibilities are there, but all in all, most players, if they are folding top pair, will fold close to 100% of their range. So this bet is absolutely printing. Like, it cannot be underestimating how much this bet would make. Even if he calls ace-queen and king-queen sometimes, he'll still have all those other hands, like middle pair, pocket pairs, some ace-high, weaker queen-x that might fold, and then he'll be folding like, what, 70% of the time, 75% of the time? In which case we're still making money. The only instance where this bet does not auto-profit is if villain is capable of trapping some flushes and straights and sets on the river, which, as I said before, most people are not capable of balancing their range like this. This is what we mean by taking advantage of villain's capped range and just blasting off. If we blast off, we make money, because villain is not capable of protecting their checking range. Okay, so what about other bet sizes? What about, instead of betting 260, we just bet 181? What about betting pot? The problem with betting pot is that it makes top pair an easy call. If the opponent has ace-queen, king-queen, queen-jack, queen-10, it's kind of easy for villain to call. There's no real maths to back this up. This is just based on my experience at the micro stakes. If you bet pot, it just incentivizes villain to call way too easily. And then even though the bet has to work only 50% of the time, compared to 59% of the time, I don't think it's going to work that often. If most of his range is top pair, you're going to get looked up often. Additionally, if you bet pot and villain has like tens, he's got a pretty decent bluff catcher, and because you didn't overbet to scare him off, and you only bet pot, some people will find a call there with tens. So what about another size? What about just going the other way and going all in? If you go all in, I think this is kind of good, because you'll certainly blast off his entire range, and then it will be profitable. However, as I said before, you never really know if villain's going to trap some of their straights and flushes. If he traps the nut flush here and you bet all in, you just give him money. Whereas if you bet 260, you risk a lot less to get the same result. And if you're risking a lot less to get the same result, then that is definitely the preferred option. There is another bet size that I haven't really put in text, but like, what if you just bet 25% pot? What if you bet tiny? To try and look really value-y, and then to try and get him to fold like ace-high and lower pocket pairs. If you bet a quarter pot here, like say if you bet 40 cents here, and you believe that villain will fold some of his ace-high, then it is a profitable bet. Betting 40 to win 181 will win, sorry, a quarter pot's not 40, it's like 45. But anyway, betting like a quarter pot only has to work 20% of the time, and if he folds just a small part of his range, it does profit. The problem is that it doesn't profit as much as betting 260 here, because the majority of his range will still call. So even though you're risking a lot less and it doesn't have to work as often, it's just not as good as overbetting. Okay, so let's look at another example. Hero opens ace-9 off in the small blind, and villain in the big blind calls. Flop comes king 8-5, and we bet 1/3 pot, villain calls. Turn goes check check, and it's on us on the river. What should we do? Okay, again, this is another spot to overbet. purely because people are not capable of protecting their turn checking range. When we open pre and then we bet 1/3 pot and villain calls and then he just checks, he's unlikely to have top pair, right? If he's unlikely to have king x, he's now just ranged down to ace high, an 8, a 5, 7/6, 9/7, like those gut shots, and maybe some random queen x that decides to float the flop like queen jack. If his best hand is second pair, then we can blast his entire range away by betting 104, by betting that overbet size. Again, if his best hand is second pair, and maybe he has some traps, but again, as I said, people are not capable of trapping that often with a turn check. If his best hand is second pair, how is he going to call? A lot of people are not going to call with an 8 if you bet 104, so he's going to make most of his range fold. This bet size is very powerful, and there are definitely instances where I should be using it more often. In my entire 2NL climb, I didn't do this nearly as often as enough as I think I should have done, and if I did, my win rate would be significantly higher. These kinds of spots, this kind of bet size is a reason why you can get a really high win rate. You know, that red line on Bogey Tracker should be quite high actually if you use this bet size quite often. So when I play in the future, I will definitely be on the lookout for these spots where the villains just caps their ranges. Additionally, if you go for this and villain calls with a set, it's definitely noteworthy that he is capable of trapping a set when most people aren't, so that you don't just like randomly blast off with like just random hands. One last thing, now that I look back at this hand, I think I should just overbet the turn instead of checking the turn, because it gives the villain an opportunity to bluff himself on the river. The queen is quite a good card to overbet because 8x and 5x are not going to find a call very often. But yeah, just small things to consider when I go forward. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully you can in your own games find these spots where villain just caps their range insanely hard, and then you just punish them with the overbet. Alright, peace guys, catch you later.